Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento. And if you've ever wondered what it takes to start a seven-figure business, then you are in the right place in today's episode. And if you've ever wondered what it takes to go from seven figures to multiple seven figures, then holy cow, you're going to love today's guest, because not only does he have an incredible business journey, but what I so appreciate and admire about today's guest and entrepreneur is that he has an amazing life story as well. And I would imagine that it comes with so much perseverance and so much personal belief to work through things. So I'm very excited to introduce you to Tim Cassidy. Tim is a recovering 14-year clipboard commando for the federal government, and he then became the co-founder and CEO of OnlineCECredits.com, which is a seven-figure online continuing education platform for licensed mental health providers. Online CE Credits experienced 350% revenue growth in its first year under his full-time leadership, growing to a $1 million company in 2023, a $2 million company in 2024, consistently maintaining better than 40% profit margins. Tim took Online CE Credits to a worldwide business competition in 2024 and earned the platform the title of Most Investable, which, why do I care about that? Because it's a testament to his dedication to building systems and processes that bring opportunity and success to many. And you all know how much I embrace that phrase of a rising tide lifts all boats. And what I really appreciate about Tim's mindset and attitude is that his goal is to share in his success and ultimately build intergenerational wealth for successive generations to use in the pursuit of their own goals and dreams. So Tim is a true entrepreneur in every single part of his being, and I'm excited for this conversation. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Tim Cassidy. All right, Tim, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Glad to be here.
Heck yes, you've got quite the story, Tim. We're probably going to talk business today. We're definitely going to talk personal today, but let's kick things off. Take us beyond the bio. Who's Tim? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Well, I in some ways think of myself as just a regular Joe, but in other ways I think of myself as someone who's, been through a lot and done a lot of different things and learned a lot of lessons along the way. But life started out really uncertain for me and my twin brother and for my parents. Let's go back to, 1981, 1982. They're in their early 20s and just starting out and lower middle class probably at that time. And my mom finds out she's pregnant with twins, and then she goes into labor way, way too early, and she has an emergency. This is like 3 months before we were supposed to be born, and has to go to the hospital. And, the doctors were telling her, hey, Gail, your twins may not make it through this, but it's important that we prioritize saving your life because you can always have more kids. So that's what they told her. And they took her into the delivery room and they did the C-section. And we were very sick. Actually, my twin had open heart surgery right after we were born. But me, they didn't find this until later, but I ended up having cerebral palsy. And as you know, it's a neuromuscular consequence of early delivery, lack of oxygen to the brain. So it's permanent, but thank God it's not progressive. But I was born with CP, and, I still walk around with it today. Had to go through several surgeries, had to learn to walk again when I was 9 years old after a big surgery, experimental at the time. Now they do it all the time on my spine. And I just had a lot of support, had a lot of family support, a lot of friend support. My parents bent over backwards to make sure I could get the best care. Ended up going to school at the University of Oklahoma. I was always a nerd in the classroom, never the most popular one, but kind of always known as the kid who studies a lot and gets things done. So I ended up going to the University of Oklahoma. I actually had dreams of going bigger. I wanted to go to Notre Dame. I applied to some other schools, didn't get into Notre Dame. I actually had one of the things I was most ashamed of at that time. Always did well in the classroom, tests and stuff, homework assignments, and people saw that. That was my outward sort of what I was known for, how I expressed myself. But when it came to standardized tests, I could only do average. So I was with all these kids in all these advanced classes in AP and honors and stuff. A couple of them were getting, national merit. They were getting 30s on the ACT, 30 something, and then 1600 or something on the SAT. And I just was getting butterflies in my stomach because I couldn't pull past average. And that's probably the main reason back then. This is 2000, 2001, that I couldn't go any higher than the University of Oklahoma with that average test score. But I had I was ranked in the top 1% of my class of 1,000 people. The top 10 got valedictorian status. So I had all this other stuff. And so I just went into OU and I did really well. I got scholarships after my first year. My parents paid for quite a bit. So between my scholarships and their help and stuff like that, I was able to get out of school with nothing but a $5,000 loan for studying abroad. I chose to study business in Spain my second half of my junior year. Learned a lot there. Met people from all over the world, learned how to be fluent in Spanish, and that really opened my eyes. And what it really helped me with and pushed me to do is to think big, right? That was my first kind of foray into thinking big, because when I'm walking into school, I'm thinking, I just belong here at OU. This is my, and nothing wrong with OU, nothing wrong with a state school, but just kind of, settling into that. But studying abroad really helped me start to think big. So then I finished there and I become what turns into a 14-year cube monkey in the federal government. And I had a lot of good years in there. I met a lot of great people and I got 3, 4, 5 promotions, something like that. And I actually, my last year in service, I got this award called Most Innovative. And it sort of makes me chuckle because there's nothing innovative about the federal government at all. I worked in aviation, so I worked in the FAA, and the big gripe now is that we rely on these old clunky systems to manage air traffic and keep us safe in the skies. All these systems are decades upon decades old, and here I am getting this award for most innovative because I set up digital filing systems in the office that I was managing. So I end up jumping ship there, I just move into the company full time, and it was something we started on the side. We started it on the side, and it was kind of a side gig. Me and my partner, she's actually a clinical psychologist, so that was my entree into the mental health world. She was doing continuing education trainings by herself and working for other companies on a contract basis. She's like, hey, I really would love to have my own audience. And of course I encouraged her. I said, yes, you should. And by the way, what if we set up a website? You do local trainings for Kansas City for your small audience that you've kind of built up. And we put your recordings on a website, make courses out of it, and try to sell it. So that's what we did in 2016, 2017. But again, this was just a side project. It wasn't even a full-time thing for me until 2020. So that's why when I go back in history, I kind of start at 2020 when I'm talking about scaling, because the pandemic just hit at the perfect time. Here we are just kind of putting her courses up, and we start hiring some of her colleagues, and then they say, this person also speaks. And so it kind of, balloons from there. And then I start hiring people from different states. And then now I've got people that I hire from different countries to come speak for us. But the pandemic was really the launching point for us. And that's when I started calling licensing boards and saying, hey, we have a bunch of courses we'd like to share with your clinicians. We're brand new in the space. Would love to offer your folks stuck at home some free trainings. And do you have a roster? Of course, a lot of them say no, but then some of them say, oh, absolutely, if you got free stuff, and would love to share it. So I think we gave away something like $50,000 or $60,000 worth of free courses in the first year and a half or so that I was scaling us. A long time to go without really making anything. It took, I think it took a year to replace my FAA salary, and then it was our third full-time year. Actually 20, 21, 22, I guess fourth full-time year was that $1 million year. So there's just a lot of toiling, a lot of work, and a lot of grinding in the trenches.
Yeah, Tim, I love so many aspects of that story, but I want to call out the fact that what my ears pick up on is the fact that your entire upbringing, your story about college, your story about studying abroad, which taught you to think big, all of that plays into the entrepreneur and the CEO that you are today, especially because, I mean, I talk to entrepreneurs for a living, not only our guests on the air, but obviously all of the listeners worldwide that email into us. And Tim, what I find is that the bigger the questions you ask, the bigger the answers you find. And I see too many entrepreneurs. Seth Godin calls it the Icarus deception, where he talks about it's more dangerous to fly low than it is to fly high. And when I think about all the entrepreneurs out there that do set that low bar and they say, you know what? If I could just make $5,000 a month with my business, that would be life-changing. Tim, you shot for the stars. I love the fact, I mean, you're calling out, even when you were new, you were emailing licensing boards just being like, hey, we're new. This is what we do. Do you want to let some people into this? A lot of times we talk about that imposter syndrome. It seems to me, and obviously you've gone through a lot of mental ups and downs. We all do as entrepreneurs, but it seems to me like you thought big, you asked big questions, and you just started chasing not only big answers, but big actions as well. How did that play into it? Because most businesses never make $1 million, but you asked $1 million questions, and you've certainly found multi-million-dollar solutions.
I think so. For us, and for me in particular, kind of at the helm, the jockey, so to speak, I just really focused on, I wanted to get traffic to the website. So I knew if I could get people to come, and then once they come, if I could really focus on customer service, that it might make a difference. Because what I could see right away with these customers of ours is that trust is inherently very low, especially with online businesses. Just think, if you think about it hard, you can kind of see the shift where prior to 2020, a lot of people went to local workshops that were in person. Yes, did CEs exist online? Absolutely they did, but it wasn't ubiquitous. So these customers of ours were used to being able to go in person to see what they were getting, to see the humans behind the offering. And so I knew that it was going to be important to try to humanize our position, to humanize our platform. And so immediately the way I did that was basically putting myself in the customer service seat. And I was there for a long time. Too long, actually, to the point where it was starting to really affect my own mental health, just being that close to customers, especially as we scaled. As you scale, you hit constraints, you hit capacity limitations, and then you have to start hiring help, hiring people. But with those growing pains, oftentimes comes you're going to upset customers. You're going to get a lot of happy people that you never hear from. And that's the thing with this business. When it's online, your best customers, and you automate. I also focused on automating the process from order all the way to completion certificate delivery. So your perfect customer is someone that you're never going to hear from. So looking at that, you're running a business that is highly scalable, almost infinitely scalable. Really, your only constraint is how much workload your server can handle. And took a few years before I even had to worry about that, but we have made sure that we can handle capacity. But so your server constraint, outside of that, it's do you have content? And I've always been really lucky, or we've been lucky with the content piece, because my co-owner is the person that provided our first 10, 20 courses, and she's very well connected in the space. Now I am very well connected, but at first I wasn't. So building that up, now speakers or potential speakers come to us and say, hey, can I speak on your platform? We get speakers that come back time and time again because they enjoy working with us. So really, I think, Brian, the key has been really being sensitive to the humans that we serve, whether they be the customers or speakers or potential speakers, and signing my name at the bottom of emails and saying, hey, I'm here to help. And being on my phone the first few years constantly, just on my phone, responding just like that, very, very, very fast. In some ways that's wrong because it's not healthy, really. It's not sustainable for a very long time without running into issues. But for better or worse, that's what I did. I just answered right away. Started building up the Google reviews, getting as much trust as we could so we could get positive word of mouth. And I think that was the key to scaling, and just offering a lot of stuff for free so that we could give people a chance. Now, not continuously, obviously, because you don't want to dilute your value as a provider. But when you're inviting someone in to try you, or if you want someone to become a customer, oftentimes you want to give before you have an expectation to receive. And we're lucky that we don't carry inventory. I don't make widgets where I have an inventory carrying cost. So I can afford, as a digital products business, I can afford to do that. So I'm fortunate there. A lot of it's in the model. The model is just really conducive to scale. So I just been focusing on customer care and just being responsive to the humans.
Yeah, I love that, especially because you bring up a point that I've always really loved embracing, which is doing things out of the gates that don't scale one day are going to give you a business worth scaling. I always love hearing from founders. For example, the Airbnb founders, that group of guys, they always talked about when they started Airbnb, they didn't have homeowners opening their homes to complete strangers, so they hustled themselves. They were prepping spaces. They were inflating air mattresses. They were opening up their apartments. Is that scalable? Absolutely not, but they did it. They refined it. They understood the market, and they were able to scale in turn. And Tim, you talk about growing pains. I want to go there with you because one thing I always love asking people at your level, multiple seven figures in revenue, is there must have been inflection points along the way where you saw that things change. And obviously the problems that you have today are not the problems that you had when you were just starting out. All of those things change over time. And just to humble brag for you guys for a minute, you've got over 1,000 hours of content, more than 200,000 active learners are using your platform, over 1 million site visitors per year. Tim, you've got all of these things that a lot of people look at and they say, wow, how do I get there? But of course you got there through those inflection points. What have those inflection points been? What were some of the things that you were doing in the beginning? What in hindsight do you realize, oh no, at that phase, it's all about mastering this. At this phase, it's all about mastering this. What does that look like when you look back at that growth journey?
Yeah, so when I that's a great question, Brian. I don't think I've answered it out loud, but if I think back to the early days, if I remember the early days, it was a lot of testing. So one thing I was fortunate to get in my federal career, one of my many stops along the way inside the federal sector, was on a couple of IT projects where I was what they call a business analyst, but the person between the end user of a piece of software and the programmer. So that person has to be really, really good at fleshing out new workflows, or when you bolt on or stand up a new piece of software, really good at understanding the workflow and what works and what doesn't, and where things break, and how to ask for it to be fixed by the programmer, how to explain it all. So I got all that experience. So what I focused on in the beginning, and it was really hard with growth, was almost constant just fix this, fix that, this looks off, or this looks sideways, or the color's not quite right, or this part's slow. And getting to the point where I was exhausting our programmer. He still gets exhausted with me. I still have the same guy that we started with, and he actually didn't grow his business as we grew. So I run into issues now with him where I've had to learn to do a lot of stuff myself from a technical standpoint because I didn't want to bother him. So if I could look back or go back and change things or foresee something, it would be that piece. If you can avoid outgrowing your web developer, you should try to avoid that. That was something very early on, because I was so focused on, hey, I want it when I stand up a course. If you have a workflow and it's digital, you want to flesh that out so well. You want it to be so perfect and so good that when you put it out there and you open it up for sale, you can be almost 100% sure that if you get a customer care ticket, almost 100% sure that it's going to be user error. It's going to be user error, right? If you are not consistent, if you don't dive deep and really scrub to make sure your workflow is on point, you're going to get more tickets. You're going to get more customers that are stuck. So in the early days, it was just a lot of that, a lot of trial and error, a lot of fixing broken things, and then putting it in the SOPs. Hey, this is how you set this up. Make sure and do this. Don't do that last. Do this first. So that was a learning point at the beginning. Also mentally, this is really important too for everybody listening to remember. Now every business is different, right? But with my customer base, they are very price sensitive, almost extremely, especially the therapists that work in community settings where they don't make a lot of money. So it is very difficult to sell courses, even courses that these folks need to maintain their licensure. And that's the environment I work in. This is not a luxury. This is not, I'm buying this course because it's going to teach me how to build model airplanes. No, this is required by the state that you practice in, that you must have X number of hours of CE credit to maintain your license. But even with that, it is very, very hard to sell a course. So in the early days, it was, I would give courses away to try to get traffic, to get trust. And that was hard because I came from a federal job where I was making $100K a year in salary. And then I walked out. I was actually in tears and I knew I wanted to leave. This is right after we got furloughed by Trump for 40 days without pay. I had decided to go full on into the company, but also get my own counseling license. So I started scaling the company at the same time I was going full time, getting my graduate degree in counseling to be to essentially become my customer. So I walked out of there in tears from my federal job, just knowing that I was walking out on. It took me, a long time to go from. I started at $32,000 a year at the age of 23. That was my salary in 2005. So I went from $32,000 a year up to $100K a year, and I walked out of that with 14 years of service. I was 1 year away from having my vacation double, and I walked away from that, and it was so difficult because those checks stopped coming in, and now all I had to look at was a Stripe account that was showing pennies. It was showing pennies daily. But eventually those pennies became dollars. $10 became $20, 20s became 50, and then 100. And then at one point in the not so distant past, I remember thinking, if we could just pull in $300 today, I'll feel good. If all we did today was pull in 300 in one day, not good, not good. So that was difficult in the beginning. That was an inflection point. Another inflection point, if I had to really think of one or push forward, this one's more recent. So once we started scaling, and we were on that 300% growth curve, we had a lot of momentum, and it was going up, and we hit 1 million, then we hit 2 million. But right as we hit 2 million, I started to see signs that we had plateaued and we were starting to go down. The first downturn was so hard that I was really scared. I couldn't eat for a while. There was times where we were upside down for multiple days on end in terms of daily expenses versus revenue. At the time, this company was the only thing sustaining our family. And it was for a long time. And it just now, my partner got out of law school. I just talked about her being a psychologist, which she's always been, but she's been in law school for like 4 years. She's going to do a second career. So during that time, those were the pivotal times of growth. And so our family we were being sustained by the business here. And I remember the point where we started to go down, it was where expenses were going up. I had to start letting people go, firing people, and then trying to find people to replace those people, primarily on the ad side, digital ads, very inconsistent performance, getting way behind on business credit card. At one point I think we were like $50,000 or something deep on the Amex card, the business Amex card. And then, personal cards get behind, and then you really start feeling scared. And that was really hard and really humbling. And then I remember thinking at some points, I should have stayed in the federal government. And then I would say that out loud. And then my spouse, she would say, that's nonsense. And she's right, it is nonsense, but it's so easy to get to that point where you really think, maybe I shouldn't have done this, or maybe I'm not cut out for it, or maybe, and I struggle with this right now. I think of myself as a technician. So I think of myself as a builder. I think of myself as more naturally skilled at the putting the pieces together and actually making the business and making it work. But I think of myself as relatively inadequate and incapable when it comes to strategic leadership and growing beyond the plateau, when that momentum carries you up to a certain point, and then you start to see it go like this. And then you ask yourself, what is the key to the next push? I think of myself even today as relatively incapable or inadequate at times in terms of being the right person to do that for us. And so that's been a big learning piece for me right now to try to grow.
Tim, that is so fascinating to hear, especially knowing all the things you've shared with us here today about your growth journey along the way. And I'm also just going to put this out there for listeners that this is the real stuff. I'm 18 years into my entrepreneurial journey, Tim, and I'm always looking. Anytime I log into LinkedIn and I see my college friends and where they are in their careers, and I'm just like, was that the easier path? Should I have just done that? And I always come back to, who cares what the easiest path is? I didn't sign up for easy. No great thing has come from the easiest path. And Tim, I'm super, super appreciative of your generosity and your transparency in the way that you share these things, because I think for every single listener tuning in who sees your results, you're shedding a light, and you're really taking us behind the curtain of, results are one thing, but these things are uniquely human. These are things that we all go through regardless of where you are on your entrepreneurial journey. And I'm going to use that as a segue, Tim. Time time always flies by here in these sessions together, but I love asking this question at the end of every interview because it's super broad and every guest takes it in whatever direction they want to. And that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? I feel like you've already dropped so much incredible knowledge and wisdom and insights on us, as well as really tangible strategies that I'm really appreciative of you sharing. But knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, what's that one thing you want to leave them with today?
That's a really good question, Brian. And I ask myself this. Well, I ask it of other people a lot too, that I meet other entrepreneurs that are further ahead than I am, or more experienced, or been through more. So it's a question that I think a lot of us are curious about. And so from me to you all, in terms of what I've learned, I feel like for me, if I could go back and do it again, if I could start again, I would have put more emphasis or more time and effort into growing connections, so professional connections, sooner rather than later. So I just started doing that within the last few months as a response to, digital ads are more expensive and it's affecting our bottom line. You guys listening right now, if you're heavy into meta ads, you know that the heyday was prior to this point in time. It was a couple years ago. It was when you could get 4, 5, 6x return on ad spend. Well, the game has changed. It's a lot different now. For most advertisers, you're lucky to get between 1 and 2x. So now, in a response to that, I've been focusing on diversifying our channels. So for us, our channels are email marketing, meta ads, and sometimes Google ads. We're ramping up Google ads again. And then, am I forgetting? Then you have organic. So what you really, in a perfect world, you want organic traffic consistent and you want it high. You want to be found organically because it's free, right? You don't pay for that. It's free traffic, free conversions. So at one point, I want you guys to listen to this. This is really bad. And I remember when I figured this out, I laughed at it, but then the hair also stood up on the back of my neck. At one point, 80% of our revenue was coming from meta ads. This is during the year we hit 2 million in revenue, right? That's great that you have a source that is so prolific in terms of producing revenue, but it's not good in the sense that you're operating in terms of your channel diversification. You are high risk, very high risk. And if you're thinking about selling your company at some point, you don't want to have to go through the process of showing a potential buyer that you are so invested in meta ads that if the algorithm changes tomorrow or something happens, that you dip severely. So I think if I could do it all over again, I would have foreseen that, and I would have planned for it, both in the form of saving some of those dollars that were coming in when money was being printed by the ad platform, and also going out and putting effort into building those personal connections with other entrepreneurs, potential stakeholders, potential partners. For us, it would be hospital systems, people that run hospital systems that employ many mental health providers. So inpatient, outpatient clinics, EHR platforms, so electronic health records platforms that serve mental health providers, providing them those platforms to manage their private practice caseload. I'm trying to do all that now, and it's a very slow process, but it's part of my effort to diversify our channels, our acquisition channels. So if I could do it all over again, I would have started that sooner, and I would have foreseen what it means to have so much of your revenue coming from one source. especially one as unpredictable as an ad platform like Meta or Google, where none of us have control over anything they're doing. So it's an ominous position to be in, but it was really weird because I'm extremely risk averse. And so when I saw that, part of me was thinking, that's funny because it's so lopsided. Part of me was thinking, that's great. I'm so glad it produces like that. And then the biggest part of me was thinking, holy Toledo, that is way, way, way too lopsided. We're standing on the edge of a cliff. So that's my biggest piece of advice to you guys out there. If you're operating highly scalable e-commerce platforms, just try to think early about that piece of operating your business. You want to be de-risked. You want to be diversified across channels if you can be. If you start to hit it big on one of your channels, consider holding back to the extent that you can do it without, tying up cash flow in a way that doesn't serve your business goals. Consider holding some back for the first. You're going to have a downturn. Even the best entrepreneurs, the most capable, are going to hit a downturn. Even the most narcissistic, I know everything, nobody knows as much as I do, I have the most reliable and demonstrative track record for success. It doesn't matter. They will hit a downturn. They will. And so plan for it.
Yes, I love that advice, Tim. And I'm going to call this out. You can't go back in time and change your own journey, but I'm super appreciative that hopefully this is the inflection point. Hopefully this is the turning point for so many listeners out there tuning into today's episode. That's the beauty of interacting with and learning from and hearing from people who are ahead of you in the journey, is that, Tim, while you can't undo it, you can certainly save a lot of us from those same mistakes. So listeners, take this stuff to heart. This isn't Tim talking about theory. That's what I'm so appreciative of incredible entrepreneurs like Tim, is that he's sharing real life lessons, real life experiences from the trenches, not always easy. And that's where we learn so many of these lessons. So Tim, I'm super appreciative of that. I'm very excited for listeners to check out all the incredible things that you've built, because you talk about being that builder. You talk about, all those pivot points that you faced along the way. And I will say, as someone from the outside looking in and landing on your website, it's amazing to me how well thought out things are, because obviously you've been doing this for a while, and obviously you're serving real life people and learning from them along the way. So for listeners who want to see it in action and find you on the internet, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, so if you're a mental health provider out there and you want to kind of see what we have out there, what we offer, the platform URL is onlinececredits.com. That is basically the hub of the business that we just spoke about today on the podcast. If you want to reach out to me personally, you can find me on LinkedIn, and I can leave a link there in the show notes for Brian to provide that, if that works. But yes, feel free to reach if you have if you want to just chat, if you want to grab a virtual coffee, if you want to talk about things, or if you see a potential synergistic partnership opportunity, please feel free to reach out to me. Heck, I'll just drop my email address. Why don't I? You can get a hold of me at twcassidy14@gmail. And the reason why I'm giving my Gmail address is I want this to be as evergreen as possible. So feel free to reach out to me directly by email if you think you have something that might be interesting for us to collaborate on or just speak about.
Heck yes, I love that, Tim. I will say, in over 1,200 episodes, we've had a few guests drop their work emails here, but listeners, you see how generous Tim is and how much he loves talking about these things. That is the first time in over 1,200 episodes someone has dropped their personal Gmail. So, Tim, I'm just like you. It's way too easy to get a hold of me, which is so much fun because you never know what sparks from just one conversation. So, listeners, Tim already alluded to it, made my job easy today, but those links are down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. If you you want to find onlinececredits.com, you can click right through if you're driving, if you're on the go, if you're at the gym. No worries, we're dropping that link, as well as a link to Tim's personal LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with him and continue the conversation, don't be shy. Most listeners are. I'm going to call all of us out that most people, when they listen to a podcast episode, they don't take that action. They don't recognize a rising tide lifts all boats and how powerful it is to interact with entrepreneurs that are 1 or 2 or 100 steps in front of you or behind you. It's always cool because you can always learn something from everyone. So Tim, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me. It was fun.